All right, I'm Nathan Smith with Tallgrass TV. We are here with Zak Piper. He's with the film Life Itself. Can you tell us a little bit about what the film is about?
Well, the film Life Itself is based on Roger Ebert's memoir, also called Life Itself. And we sort of, it's a portrait of Roger's life, his writing, his sort of, Roger the public figure, but also Roger and some more things in his private life and his relationships.
Okay. So where did obviously the genesis of the film was the book, but how did you end up attached to the documentary?
Steve Zalian, who was an executive producer on the project, had read the book and thought it would be a great documentary. And he went back to Roger and threw the idea out there. Roger thought it was a great idea, so they went to look for a director for the film. And I would think that pretty early on, Steve James' name came up, who was the director of Hoop Dreams and among other films. And they talked, and it sort of went from there, and the project was a go. And I'd worked with Steve on other films in the past, Interrupters, and a couple others, and so we had just finished like the Interrupters together, and we were still, and so we had just kind of kept going and started working on this. That was back in the fall of 2012.
Okay, excellent. And what role did you have?
I was the producer of the film, yes.
Excellent. Okay. So while you guys were filming the documentary, did you stick pretty close to the source material, or were there things that made it in that weren't in the memoir, as far as?
Well, yeah, we use the memoir as a guide. So there's certain chapters. The way the memoir is, it's not exactly linear in any way. Sort of, he'll have a chapter about a person. There's a chapter about a friend of his, Bill Knack. So we looked at the memoir. We relied heavily on the memoir and one of the other producers, a co-producer, Josh Schollmeyer, who wrote a 25,000-word oral history of the Siskel and Ebert show. He had already done so much research. We kind of worked with him early to get some advice on some other folks to interview, some other stories, So we sort of relied on both the book and Josh Schollmeyer's oral history.
So when you guys went to edit the documentary, did it change at all in the edit, or was it all pretty well as you had laid out while you were shooting?
Well, no, I think that was very much shaped in the edit. And one of the things that happened in the course of making the film, was that Roger passed away. So that really changed a lot of what the plans for the film were, and it left some challenges. We had been filming with Roger for 4 months, largely in his hospital room or at rehab, and we never quite got to sit down interview with him. And so we had to, and in preparation for that sit down interview, though, there was a series of emails between Steve and Roger, and we sort of used that as a device in the film to kind of substitute for that sit down interview, because we did get to things in that, those email exchanges that were important, and it was a way to get Roger, to insert Roger into the film in a way that we really had no other way to do.
Okay. So what was the most important lesson you learned during the making of the film?
Important lesson. Well, one thing I really enjoyed about working on the film was, and even here at Tallgrass, I've talked to a couple of people who come up and said, "Oh wow, one time I met Roger did this." Someone told me that someone here at the festival, she said, "Oh, I wrote a couple of film reviews, and Roger sent me an email about her reviews." But that's what I'm getting at is I love to hear all these stories. Like Roger, he was such a generous guy, and he was so a genuine person, I think, who really, he did things that he didn't have to do, like sending emails out of the blue to people. Sure. To give them encouragement, or to say, "Wow, I read this, I really liked what you did." So I loved being associated with the film, because then I get a chance to hear these stories about Roger. And it seems like almost everyone, not all, but lots of people have Roger stories that are unexpected ones. One was a waitress at a restaurant in Chicago who had made a film about a guy who every morning wore like really bright suits and waved at all the cars as they went to work on this bridge. And she made this film about this guy, and somehow it got into the hands of Roger, and he programmed it at his film festival.
Oh.
And brought her down, and just stories like that. I love to hear that kind of stuff.
Okay. What was the most challenging aspect of the filmmaking process?
I think one of the real challenges was to try to figure out, because Roger, been writing since 1967, 66, 67. So he had, his TV show started in 75. There's just a lot of archival material. There was a lot of, and how do we, number one, go through all that? How do we, figure out what to use in the film? There's just a lot of, work and a lot of, we had to go through research and, trying to uncover new material that maybe we didn't want to just kind of use all the greatest hits. We do use some of that for sure, some of the more memorable, maybe interviews with, or clips from the Siskel and Ebert show, but we wanted to also find some things that, even like the most dedicated, hardcore, Siskel and Ebert fan would never have seen before. So, but to go through all of that it was a team effort. There were several people on the team who were dedicated to this, so that was definitely a challenge.
How long did it take to come through that?
We started the archival research at the very beginning. We hadn't even shot. The day we met to talk about a filming schedule, we brought Emily Hart with us, who was a co-producer of the film, and she was also the lead archival researcher. So we started right away because Roger had a closet in his office that was filled with just stacks of stuff. I mean, newspapers, photos, all kinds of stuff, sketchbooks, and we needed to, and it wasn't organized, really. So it was going to archives. There was a lot.
What filmmakers have inspired you personally?
Well, me personally, I've always been really interested in documentary. I was interested in documentary as a teenager and still in high school, and I really was focused in on that. I went to film school. I think some of the early documentary makers from the 60s, like the Drew Associates, people who were right on the front end of this new direct cinema, cinema verite, but they call it the direct cinema approach to filmmaking, where you're not just doing these glorified, presentations, or just like pictures and someone's heavily narrating, and it's like these scenes where things are actually happening, and so yeah, the Drew Associates, D.A. Pennybaker, Ricky Leacock, the Maisels brothers, but even at Cartemplin Films, where this film, Life Itself, the production company, that has been around since the mid-60s also. So Gordon Quinn, who was one of the founders, also an influence, a mentor of mine.
Excellent. All right. So what's next for you?
Well, I'm working on several projects right now, a couple in development, one that's just finishing that will be premiering in November at a festival in Amsterdam. So kind of focused in right now on finishing that up, but I expect to be working on a couple of different films next year. So.
Excellent. All right. Well, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.